In the 41st millennium, there are worlds where gravity is an argument and truth is a rumor whispered by teeth. But what happens when the architect of empire awakens upon a planet that denies the very concept of structure? Roboute Guilliman did not fall. He arrived. The sky above him was the color of arterial spray, clouds twisting like flensed muscle across a horizon that bent in ways no sane geometry allowed. The ground felt solid beneath his boots, ceramite grinding against blackened stone. But when he shifted his weight, the shadows moved a heartbeat too late, as though the world were correcting itself after he had stepped upon it. Third-person perspective follows him here, because the planet watches him, and so must we. His armor, blue immaculate despite atmospheric corrosion, hummed with restrained power. The hand of dominion flexed once, servo motors whispering with machine precision. The Emperor's sword burned in his grip, its flame steady, but its light distorted at the edges, bending like a candle flame in a storm. Warp saturation, heavy, intentional. He did not speak at first. He observed. No Vox signal returned his hails. No fleet auger answered. His strike cruiser was gone. Whether devoured by the Imperium or displaced by sabotage, he could not yet calculate. But Guilliman's mind, honed by 10,000 years of war and administration, had already begun constructing possibilities. A demon world. The air tasted like copper and incense. Wind carried distant chanting, out of rhythm, overlapping, layered like arguments in a cathedral of madness. He recognized the pattern not as language, but as ritual pressure. The planet was aware. He stepped forward. The ground resisted. Not physically, philosophically. Reality here did not reject him. It tested him. A fissure tore open 30 meters ahead. From it rose figures that had once been men. Astra Militarum uniforms fused with flesh, laser guns grown into bone. Their faces were masks of devotional agony, eyes leaking ichor as they screamed praises to something unseen. Guilliman moved, not with haste, with inevitability. The first creature lunged. The Emperor's sword described a perfect arc. Warp flesh parted like rotted parchment. Holy flame consumed what spilled forth, and for a moment the sky dimmed, as though irritated by the interruption. Bolter fire erupted from Guilliman's gauntlet. Each shot a precise solution, each explosion a rebuttal. The creatures fought with frenzy, but no discipline. Guilliman adjusted footwork as terrain subtly shifted, stone softening, angles warping. He compensated instantly, recalculating vector and momentum as if revising a battlefield map in real time. Within 20 seconds, the abominations were ash. He stood amid smoking remains, flame casting long, distorted shadows. The planet inhaled. A ripple passed across the horizon. Distant structures, cathedral spires grown from bone, twitched. Guilliman understood then. This was not random hostility. It was theater. He was meant to be seen. He activated his helm's internal cogitator array. Environmental readings flickered with contradiction. Atmospheric pressure fluctuated in patterns too regular to be natural. Warp energy density rivaled a stable rift. This world was curated, a test or bait. If you crave stories of cosmic collisions and impossible heroes, smash that subscribe button. The Emperor protects those who bear witness to the dark millennium. His voice carried not to an audience beyond the fourth wall, but to the abyss itself. Defiance, measured and deliberate. The chanting intensified. On a distant ridge, figures emerged. human silhouettes bearing crude banners of flayed skin. They did not attack. They watched. Guilliman extinguished the sword's flame and began walking toward them. He would not be hurted. Each step was an assertion. Order exists, even here. The ridge shifted distance twice before he reached it. Time stretched, then snapped back. But Guilliman did not quicken pace. He adapted stride length subtly, correcting for spatial distortion as a mathematician corrects rounding error. When he crested the rise, he found not cultists, but survivors, human, thin, scarred, eyes hollow with exhaustion. They fell to their knees at the sight of him. "Lord Commander," one whispered, voice cracking. "We prayed." Guilliman's gaze hardened almost imperceptibly. Prayer was a vector on this world, a signal flare. Behind the kneeling figures, beyond the broken rock formations, he saw it, a city grown like a tumor across the plains. Spires of brass and bone, rivers of something that shimmered wrong beneath the bleeding sky. Warp lightning crackled above its central tower, and something within that tower turned its attention toward him. Guilliman did not smile, but he recognized strategy when he saw it. He had not been stranded. He had been invited. The survivors lifted their heads, a hope flickering dangerously bright in their eyes. "My lord," another said, trembling, "it knows you're here." Guilliman looked toward the demon city. "Good," he replied, and began descending toward it. The survivors called the settlement Harrowfall, though it was neither a settlement nor a fall. It was a wound that had refused to close. The structures were scavenged plating and bone-latticed barricades arranged in tight concentric rings, defensive geometry etched into desperation. Guilliman noted the patterns immediately. Someone here understood fortification doctrine. Crude, but intentional. Kill lanes overlapped. Elevated firing nests commanded the approaches. Scrap metal icons of the Aquila hung from spines driven into the ground, half devotional, half defiant. And every single icon pulsed faintly with warp resonance. He felt it like a pressure against his thoughts. The people of Harrowfall moved with the twitchy caution of prey animals. Their clothing bore Imperial remnants. Guard flak armor stitched with leather flensed from unknown beasts. Laser guns had been modified with ritual etchings, purity seals smeared into something darker. Children watched him from behind barricades with wide, unbelieving eyes. Hope had weight here, dangerous weight. The man who had first spoken approached again, former Astra Militarum, rank insignia long since carved away. His name was Varys. "We thought you were a vision," Varys admitted. "The sky sometimes lies." "It still does," Guilliman replied evenly. He walked through Harrowfall's inner ring, noting supplies, weapons count, population density. Approximately 300 souls, malnourished, morale fragile, but not broken. The chanting from the distant demon city had shifted timbre. Lower now, harmonizing. Guilliman stopped. You pray to the Emperor," he said. It was not a question. Varys hesitated. "We must. It keeps the nightmares back." Guilliman turned slowly, blue armor catching the ruddy light. "No, it announces you." Confusion rippled through the gathered survivors. He extended his gauntlet toward one of the scrap Aquilas. The metal icon shuddered. Warp light flickered along its edges like veins beneath skin. "This world feeds on signal," Guilliman continued. "Faith is signal." A murmur spread, fear and anger intertwined. "You would have us abandon him?" a woman demanded, clutching a rosarius whose gem pulsed faintly violet instead of gold. Guilliman's gaze sharpened. "I would have you survive." He strode to the perimeter wall and activated his helm's external amplifiers. Across the plains, eye shapes were gathering, warped infantry assembling in ranks that were mockeries of Astra Militarum formations. Brass-armored figures marched among them, banners snapping in wind that carried flies. Nurgle's host. The pattern was deliberate. Show the survivors their Primarch. Let hope flare, then answer it with spectacle. The ground trembled. A gout of pestilential fog rolled outward from the demon city, coiling low across the earth. Guilliman recalculated. "Extinguish the icons," he ordered. "All of them, now." There was hesitation, then movement. Survivors scrambled, tearing down symbols they had clung to for years. Some wept as they did so. The fog advanced. Guilliman stepped beyond the wall. "Hold your positions," he commanded. "Fire only on my mark." The approaching host broke into a charge. Diseased flesh sloughing, armor fused to bloated forms. Rotting artillery beasts dragged themselves forward, cannons coughing spores instead of shells. Guilliman ignited the Emperor's sword. Warp flame flared, but stuttered for half a heartbeat. He felt it. The world pressed back. Not enough. He advanced to meet them alone. The first wave crashed like a tidal surge of decay. Guilliman moved through it with ruthless efficiency. Each strike burned corruption to ash, holy fire leaving clean absence where rot had been. He pivoted, seized a plague marine by its corroded helm, and drove the hand of dominion through ceramite and bone alike. Behind him, Harrowfall held fire, discipline barely intact. The fog thickened. Something large moved within it. Guilliman adjusted tactics mid-engagement, repositioning to prevent encirclement. He targeted banner bearers first, decapitating symbolic cohesion. He crushed Vox relay parasites attached to plague artillery, disrupting coordination, competence in motion. The survivors watched their Primarch carve through nightmare, and hope flared again, too bright. From within the fog, a voice rolled outward, wet, resonant, amused. "Lord of Ultramar," it crooned, "you bring them something delicious." The fog parted. A massive figure emerged, armor swollen with growth, antlers of bone curling from a helm split by corrosion. A demon host swollen with Nurgle's indulgence. Not yet the master of this world, but a herald. "Lay down your blade," the herald called, gesturing toward Harrowfall. "Surrender the concept of Ultramar. Admit that order rots like all things, and I will spare your little congregation." The offer was not theatrical. It was strategic. Guilliman cut down another charging monstrosity without looking away from the herald. "You misunderstand," he replied, calmly. He extinguished the sword for a fraction of a second. The warp pressure dipped. Behind him, Harrowfall's icons lay broken. The signal dimmed. The fog faltered. Then Guilliman reignited the blade, not as beacon, but as weapon only. "This is not a negotiation," he charged. Guilliman closed the distance in 6 strides. The Nurgle herald did not retreat. It expanded, flesh sloughed and reknit in anticipation, armor plates cracking to reveal tumorous muscle beneath. Rusted bells swung from its antlers, tolling with a sound that made the air curdle. Each peal sent a ripple across the ground, soil swelling like infected tissue, then settling again. The fog tightened into a ring around them, a dueling circle. Guilliman registered the tactical implications instantly. The host forces slowed their advance, forming a perimeter beyond the mist. This was spectacle again, but also containment. The Daemon World wanted the confrontation framed. He would not be framed. The herald swung a massive, corrosion-eaten scythe. The blade hummed with warp contagion, its edge trailing vapor that dissolved stone where it passed. Guilliman stepped inside the arc rather than away, the Emperor's sword flashing upward. Holy flame met pestilence in a violent hiss that shattered the nearest bells. Warp energies collided, order against entropy. For a fraction of a second, the sky cleared to bruised purple instead of arterial red. The herald laughed. "You feel it, don't you?" it croaked. "Your light bends here." Guilliman did feel it. The Emperor's sword burned true, but its radiance did not project as far. The warp density pressed inward, compressing the aura of sanctified flame. A battlefield variable, not a weakness, a constraint. He adjusted. Rather than sweeping arcs meant to cleanse wide swathes, he shifted to precision strikes. Minimal flare, maximal lethality. Each cut targeted structural vulnerabilities. Knee joints swollen beyond support, arterial sacs pulsing beneath exposed rib plating, the ligament clusters anchoring the demon's right arm. The scythe came again. Guilliman caught the haft in his gauntlet. The metal screamed under pressure as the hand of Dominion crushed inward, servo motors whining with calibrated force. The herald leaned close, breath reeking of sweet rot. "You are alone," it whispered. "Incorrect." Guilliman pivoted, using the demon's own weight to unbalance it. With a surge of gene-forged strength, he tore the scythe free and drove the Emperor's sword through the herald's exposed torso. Holy flame erupted internally. The bells shattered. The demon howled, not in pain, but in outrage, as its form destabilized. Guilliman withdrew the blade and kicked the collapsing mass backward into the fog ring. The mist recoiled, thinning as if burned by proximity. For a heartbeat, silence held. Then the perimeter host surged forward, enraged by the herald's unraveling. Guilliman turned toward Harrowfall's walls. Now! Lasgun fire lanced outward from the barricades in disciplined volleys. The survivors' restraint paid off. Concentrated salvos punched through lesser warp spawn that might have shrugged off scattered shots. Guilliman advanced in tandem, creating a moving anchor point the defenders could align their fire around. The ground shifted again, stone liquefying beneath charging cultists. Guilliman recognized the pattern this time, the planet responding to morale spikes. Harrowfall's renewed hope was triggering environmental retaliation. He made a decision. "Varys!" he called over helm-amplified vox. The former guardsman responded instantly. "My lord, withdraw your outer ring 5 meters. Compress formation. Do not pursue." Confusion flickered, but Varys obeyed. The defensive geometry tightened, reducing exposed surface area. The liquefaction zone expanded, just beyond the new perimeter. Cultists stumbled as terrain betrayed them, bodies sinking into viscous stone. Guilliman exploited the chaos, cutting through isolated clusters with brutal efficiency. Competence layered upon adaptability. The survivors saw it. Hope shifted from blind worship to focused trust. The fog finally broke. Warp lightning arced overhead, striking the Daemon City's central spire. The herald's dissipating essence streamed toward it like smoke drawn into a lung. Guilliman watched carefully. That was confirmation. The herald had not been autonomous. It had been a mouthpiece. The real intelligent directing events remained within the city. As the last of the immediate host forces fell, the plains grew still. Too still. No carrion beasts emerged. No secondary wave followed. A pause in the script. Guilliman extinguished his blade and turned back toward Harrowfall. Several survivors stared at him as though witnessing a miracle. He ignored the reverence. "How long has that entity ruled here?" he asked Varys. "Years," Varys answered hoarsely. "It calls itself the Gardener of Kings." Nurgle aligned then, cultivation of decay as inevitability. Guilliman looked toward the demon city's towering spire, where warp energy still pulsed rhythmically. "This was a probe," he said. "It measured us." Varys swallowed. "Measured for what?" Guilliman's eyes narrowed slightly. "For negotiation." Behind them, one of the torn-down Aquilas twitched. Warp residue lingered. The planet was listening, and it had just lost its herald. Night did not fall on the Daemon World. It shifted. The bleeding sky dimmed to a bruised violet, and the horizon line folded inward like a closing wound. The air thickened with the scent of damp earth and something sweeter, overripe, cloying, like fruit left too long in a sealed crypt. Harrowfall's people worked in disciplined silence. Guilliman had ordered no hymns, no chants, no collective prayer. Fires were shielded, movements were measured. Hope was kept contained, like promethium stored in reinforced tanks. The planet did not respond well to emotional excess. Guilliman stood at the settlement's highest vantage point, a repurposed Vox tower stripped of its transmitters. His armor bore fresh scoring, warp residue still evaporating from the ceramite in faint curls of smoke. He allowed himself one moment of stillness. Then the world answered. A ripple moved through the air. Not wind, but pressure. The ground did not tremble. It breathed. From the plain below, a thin line of pale light traced itself across the earth, carving a path toward Harrowfall's gates. Not an attack, an invitation. Guilliman descended the tower without haste. Varys met him at the gate. "My lord, we can bar it." Guilliman studied the luminous line. It pulsed at regular intervals, too precise to be random warp flux. "No," he said. "It wants conversation." The gates opened. Guilliman stepped beyond the perimeter, alone. The line of light extended forward as he walked, guiding him across the plains toward the distant demon city. The terrain did not distort this time. No sinkholes formed, no cultists emerged. The world was quiet, measured. Halfway to the city, the air shimmered. A figure stepped into existence ahead of him, not rising from the ground nor descending from the sky, but simply occupying a space that had not been there before. It wore the rotting armor of a space marine, but elongated, warped, fused with organic growth. Antlers crowned its helm. Its pauldrons bore a corrupted sigil that might once have belonged to a chapter long forgotten. This was no herald. This was presence, the Gardener of Kings. "Primarch," it said, voice layered, human, demonic, something older beneath both. "You adapt well." Guilliman did not slow. "You stage your world like a theater," he replied evenly. "But you mistake me for an audience." The demon inclined its head slightly, amused. "You are more than audience. You are thesis." The ground around them sprouted fungal growth in symmetrical patterns, circles within circles, ritual geometry. "You came to rescue," the gardener continued. To impose order, to fix what is broken. Guilliman stopped at the center of the pattern. You misunderstand my objective. Do I? The demon's armor wept slow streams of black ichor that soaked into the soil, birthing small, twitching organisms. You believe suffering can be managed, cataloged, minimized. You are empire incarnate. A pause. This world disproves you. Guilliman studied the ritual circle. Warp energy pulsed faintly along its edges. Not a trap designed to kill, a test designed to corrupt. You offer terms, Guilliman said. The gardener's laugh was soft, almost gentle. Surrender not your life, not your blade, merely your certainty. The sky shifted again, images flickering across the clouds, Ultramar aflame, Macraga's spires collapsing, Imperial citizens turning on one another in despair. All systems decay, the demon said. All empires rot. Admit it, accept entropy as law, and I will spare Harrowfall. I will spare 100 such settlements. I will even allow you to leave. Warp pressure intensified around the circle. Guilliman felt it pressing at the edges of his mind. Not brute force, but insinuation. A subtle erosion of absolutes, dimensional incompatibility. This world's physics favored suggestion over impact. Guilliman answered not with rhetoric, but with action. He stepped forward. The ritual geometry flared. Spores erupted upward in a spiraling column, attempting to encase him in a cocoon of fungal mass. Guilliman drove the hand of dominion downward, slamming his gauntlet into the ground with calculated force. The earth cracked. Not randomly, precisely along stress points he had identified seconds earlier. The ritual circle shattered. Warp energy dispersed in chaotic backlash, distorting the daemon's form momentarily. The gardener staggered half a step. Guilliman closed the distance. I do not deny entropy, he said coldly. I account for it. The Emperor's sword ignited. Not in a wide flare, but a concentrated needle-like burn. He thrust, not at the demon's core, but at the sigil embedded in its chest plate, the corrupted chapter icon. Holy flame struck it. The sigil screamed. The gardener recoiled as cracks spider-webbed across its armor. You are not inevitability, Guilliman continued, pressing the attack. You are infection, the demon lashed out, claws raking across Guilliman's breastplate. Warp corrosion sizzled against ceramite, eating shallow grooves. Pain registered, contained. Guilliman pivoted, avoiding a follow-up strike that would have decapitated a lesser being. He withdrew, reassessing. This was not the moment to destroy the demon. It was the moment to provoke it. You miscalculated, Guilliman said. How? The gardener hissed. You assumed I came to save Harrowfall. The Primarch's gaze lifted toward the Daemon city's central spire. I came to study you. The gardener's amusement flickered, just slightly, and for the first time since Guilliman's arrival, the Daemon World sky did not respond immediately. A silence, a recalibration. The invitation had become a contest, and Guilliman had just rewritten its premise. The silence did not last. It inverted. The sky convulsed, not in rage, but in adaptation. The bruised violet firmament rippled inward toward the Daemon city's central spire, as if the world were folding its focus onto a single point. The Gardener of Kings withdrew half a step, not in fear, but in reassessment. Guilliman had disrupted the ritual geometry. Now the Daemon world would escalate through infrastructure. The plains between Harrowfall and the city shifted. The Earth split along deliberate fault lines, revealing vast mechanical substructures beneath the organic decay. Brass pistons the size of hab blocks pumped rhythmically, extruding slabs of metal fused with cartilage. Conveyor belts made of flayed skin dragged chains of bound shapes toward towering silhouettes in the distance. The dark Mechanicum, and Guilliman recognized the pattern instantly. This was no mere demon world grown wild. It was cultivated, engineered, its decay industrialized. The gardener's form began dissolving into drifting spores. "You seek understanding," it said, voice dispersing with its body. "Then seek the roots." It vanished. The luminous path Guilliman had followed guttered out. In its place, a new line ignited, angling not toward the city's cathedral towers, but toward a lower district belching black smoke, a forge complex. Guilliman turned back only once, toward Harrowfall. The settlement's walls were intact, no immediate host forces mobilized. The world was investing elsewhere. Good. He advanced toward the forge. The terrain grew increasingly mechanical. Organic corruption gave way to rusted gantries, servo arms tipped with bone saws, and vast crucibles where molten metal mixed with liquefied flesh. The air was thick with ozone and rot. Vox static crackled in his helm, filled with binary chatter, twisted by demonic cadence. He entered the perimeter without stealth. Alarms did not sound. Instead, massive gates ground open. Inside, the Forge Cathedral rose like a parody of a Mechanicus manufactorum. Cog-toothed arches intertwined with rib cages the size of titans. Red glowing data scrolls floated in midair, inscribed in scrap code that bled. At the center of the chamber stood a figure suspended by mechadendrites. A heretic magos, once human, now more brass and bone than flesh. Its lower body merged into a spider-like platform of grinding limbs. One eye glowed red, the other was a hollow socket leaking black vapor. Primarch, it intoned in binaric-laced Gothic. Designation, Roboute Guilliman. Statistical improbability, 0.003%. Guilliman scanned the chamber. Null-field emitters, corrupted but functional, were embedded in the walls. Weak, localized dead zones flickered intermittently. So that was it, weaponized null tech. Short bursts, enough to dampen warp manifestations, including his blade's projection. "You constructed this world's infrastructure," Guilliman said. "Correction," the Magos replied. "We optimized it. The gardener provides organic substrate. We refine." Chains clanked overhead. Guilliman followed the sound upward. Suspended along the cathedral ceiling were void ship components, engines, navigational arrays, plasma cores. Captured, dismantled, integrated. "You seek departure vectors," the Magos continued. "We possess partial star charts, warp-stable corridors. For a price." Guilliman's gaze hardened. "You serve chaos." "We serve continuity," the Magos replied. "Chaos provides resource abundance. Imperium provides ideological constraint. We prefer efficiency, pragmatic heresy." The null-field emitters flickered again, briefly dampening the ambient warp pressure. Guilliman felt the change, a tightening in perception, a momentary clarity, a tool. "You require something," Guilliman said. "Affirmative," the Magos responded. "The gardener's dominion is inefficient. Cyclical purges reduce harvest yield. We require recalibration." They wanted regime change, not redemption, not allegiance, optimization. Guilliman processed the variables rapidly. A direct assault on the demon city without intelligence would be costly, even for him. Harrowfall could not withstand sustained retaliation. The Dark Mechanicum possessed maps, infrastructure data, and null tech capable of disrupting warp concentrations. But alliance with heretics carried moral cost. The Magos extended a mechadendrite, projecting a holomap into the air. The Daemon city's sublevels glowed in intricate detail: power conduits, ritual nexuses, core reactor nodes. "We provide this," it said. "You destabilize Central Spire. Result, localized collapse of Gardner's authority. We assume administrative control." Guilliman stepped closer to the projection. The map was accurate, painfully so. "You would replace one tyrant with another," he said. "Correction," the Magos replied. "We would replace unpredictability with production." The Null-field flared again, stronger this time. The Emperor's sword dimmed slightly in response. Guilliman noted the calibration curve. Recoverable, temporary. The Magos tilted its head. "You cannot conquer this world alone, Primarch. Even you." Guilliman's silence stretched. He thought of Harrowfall, of the ritual circle, of the gardener's thesis, entropy inevitable. Then he looked up at the ceiling, at the void ship engines suspended like trophies. "Your null fields," Guilliman said. "Can they be mobilized?" "Affirmative. Portable. With modification." Guilliman met the Magos' single glowing eye. "You will give me the maps," he said, "and the emitters. And in exchange," Guilliman's voice was iron, "you will live long enough to regret this bargain." The Magos paused, calculating risk probabilities. Then, slowly, it inclined its mechanical torso. Agreement acknowledged. Above them, chains began to lower. And in the distant spire, something ancient shifted its attention. The gardener had lost its herald. Now it was about to lose its monopoly. The Null-field emitters were not elegant devices. They were brutal. Each unit resembled a coffin-sized reliquary of brass and blackstone, etched with corrupted Benharic litanies and bound in chains that pulsed faintly with warp backlash. Servo limbs detached them from cathedral walls with grinding shrieks, lowering them to the forge floor where Dark Mechanicum adepts scuttled to reconfigure power couplings. Guilliman oversaw the process without visible impatience. He studied schematics projected in the air, data overlaid with ritual geometry, energy flux patterns intersecting with organic growth networks beneath the demon city's crust. The spire was not merely symbolic, it was a nexus, channeling warp density through industrial infrastructure like a pump feeding an infection. Destabilize the nexus, and the gardener's reach would fragment, but not vanish. The Magos approached, mechadendrites twitching with restrained eagerness. Portable emitters calibrated to 3-minute saturation cycles, it intoned. Effective null radius, 20 meters. Warp manifestations within field reduced by 72% efficiency. Guilliman processed that instantly. 72% was sufficient, not to kill a Daemon Prince outright, but to force it into a fight governed by physics instead of philosophy. "You will deploy them at these coordinates," Guilliman said, indicating sub-level junctions beneath the spire. Simultaneously. The Magos' remaining eye flickered. Simultaneity increases exposure risk. Guilliman met its gaze. Correct. The forge trembled, not from structural failure, but from something deeper. The Daemon World had sensed the shift in initiative. Warp pressure thickened again, coiling through ventilation shafts like invasive smoke. A lesser adept shrieked as spores burst from its augmetic implants, metal twisting into fungal growth mid-scream. The Magos incinerated it without hesitation. Resource loss acceptable, it stated calmly. Guilliman did not react. Efficiency without morality, a useful tool, but a temporary one. He activated a tactical overlay in his helm. Harrowfall's position glowed to the west. No major host mobilization detected. The Gardener was focusing inward, tightening defenses around the spire. Good. That meant it feared structural assault. Transport? Guilliman asked. Subterranean transit, the Magos replied. Maintenance corridors beneath organic crust, at risk of demonic interference high. Guilliman nodded once. He selected 6 emitters. Prepare them for immediate deployment. The Magos hesitated, a flicker of ambition surfacing. Primarch, it said carefully. If the Gardener falls, authority vacuum will destabilize production. We propose joint governance. Guilliman stepped closer, towering even amid mechadendrite forests. You propose survival, he corrected. Governance is not yours to claim. The Magos' optic dimmed slightly. Guilliman did not elaborate. He turned toward the transit shaft. As he descended into the underworld beneath the demon city, the atmosphere shifted from industrial rot to something older. The corridors were lined with ribbed stone that pulsed faintly, as though the planet's bones had been hollowed and repurposed. Pipes carried viscous fluids that glowed sickly green. Every surface hummed with low-frequency vibration. A heartbeat. Warp density intensified. The first demonic resistance came not as soldiers, but as architecture. Walls bulged inward, forming tooth-lined maws that snapped at passing adepts. Guilliman advanced at point, Emperor's sword ignited in controlled flare. Within the Null-field radius of the first activated emitter, the walls lost cohesion. Stone reverting to inert matter, teeth crumbling to chalk. Physics reasserted itself, briefly. Emitter 1 deployed, crackled the Magos over encrypted channel. A pressure wave rippled outward. Guilliman felt it immediately. Clarity sharpening perception, warp noise dampened to a manageable hiss. Ahead, corridor junction 3. He accelerated. A tide of plague marines surged from the darkness, armor fused with pipes and dripping effluent. They fired corrupted bolters that spat globules of corrosive bile. Guilliman did not slow. He moved through the barrage with preternatural precision, calculating projectile arcs mid-flight, deflecting 2 with his gauntlet, allowing one to glance off reinforced shoulder plating at an angle that minimized damage. Within the emitter's radius, the plague marine's regenerative flesh faltered. Guilliman exploited the lapse mercilessly. Blade strokes were economical. Decapitations, spinal severance, joint disarticulation, competence made lethal. Emitter 2, the Magos signaled. Another wave of null pressure expanded. The corridor's organic growth withered. The spire's substructure trembled. Above them, in the demon city's highest chamber, the Gardener felt it. The heartbeat stuttered. Guilliman reached Junction 3 and planted the third emitter personally. As it powered up, the warp saturation in the immediate area collapsed like a punctured lung. And for the first time since arriving on the world, Guilliman felt something close to normal gravity of causality. The Gardener's voice echoed through the tunnels, no longer amused. "You bring silence," it hissed. Guilliman ignited the sword brighter. "I bring structure." The assault had begun, and the Daemon World was no longer dictating every variable. The third emitter's activation was not merely a tactical success. It was a declaration of war written in subtraction. As the Null-field expanded, the Undercity convulsed. Organic conduits shriveled. Warp lightning that once flowed through translucent veins guttered into harmless sparks. The oppressive psychic weight that had pressed at Guilliman's mind since arrival receded just enough to reveal something beneath it: structure. The demon city had been grown, yes, but grown upon scaffolding, transit grids, energy routing channels, load-bearing pylons disguised as cathedrals of decay. The gardener had not built chaos. It had optimized entropy, and Guilliman had just found its load-bearing assumptions. "Emitter 4 compromised," the Magos transmitted. Demonic convergence exceeding tolerances. Guilliman recalculated the assault timeline. They had perhaps 6 minutes before the gardener reorganized resistance into a concentrated counterstrike. He advanced deeper. The tunnel widened into a cavernous chamber beneath the spire's foundation. Here, the walls were not stone but braided tendons thicker than rhino hulls. They pulsed in synchronized rhythm, feeding warp energy upward like arterial flow. At the chamber's center stood a massive organic column, root system fused with reactor core. Ritual sigils crawled across its surface, rewriting themselves in real time. There was the heart. The gardener manifested opposite him, not fully, but in overlapping projections. A dozen half-formed bodies flickered around the chamber, each speaking with the same layered voice. "You amputate symptoms," it said. "You do not cure inevitability." Guilliman stepped forward, emitter 5 carried in his left hand. "I am not here to cure you," he replied. The projections lunged simultaneously, without full warp coherence inside the expanding null fields. Their movements lagged microseconds behind intention. Enough. Guilliman moved like a commander executing a drill he had rehearsed 1,000 times. He anticipated converging attack vectors, pivoted through the first projection, allowing its claws to pass through air he had already vacated. His blade carved a tight arc, severing the anchor points that tethered 2 manifestations to the root column. The illusions flickered. The gardener roared, not in pain, but in strategic frustration. The ground split open beneath Guilliman's feet. He jumped, not backward, but forward, closing distance to the root column instead of retreating from the trap. The Emperor's sword plunged into the pulsing mass. Warp energy detonated outward in a shockwave that shattered stalactite-like growths from the ceiling. The null field strained, flickering dangerously. "Emitter 6 required immediately," Guilliman transmitted. "Routing," the Magos began, then silence. The channel dissolved into scrap code static. Guilliman felt it instantly. Betrayal, probability, rising. Above, the cavern ceiling ruptured as a massive shape descended, one of the captured void ship plasma cores, now fused with demonic flesh. It screamed in binary and rot as it targeted Guilliman with lances of superheated corruption. The dark Mechanicum had made its calculation. If Guilliman killed the gardener outright, the resulting destabilization might annihilate the industrial substrate they coveted. Better to let both titans weaken each other. Guilliman did not curse. He adapted. He tore the sword free from the root column and hurled emitter 5 directly at the descending plasma core abomination. The device activated mid-air, its null field blooming just as the creature fired. Warp-charged plasma destabilized within the dead zone. The creature imploded. Fragments of corrupted engine casing rained down like meteor shrapnel. Guilliman used the distraction to slam emitter 5 into the base of the root column. As it activated, the chamber's warp density dropped precipitously. For the first time, the gardener's projections collapsed into a single form. Not towering, not mythic, just large enough to kill. "You break my cultivation," it snarled, stepping into full physicality. "You think the heretics will spare your settlement once I fall?" Guilliman's eyes hardened. "I never intended them to." The Daemon Prince charged. Without warp fluidity, its movements were powerful, but constrained. Guilliman met it head-on. The clash was seismic. Blade against corrupted talon, gauntlet against diseased armor. Sparks and ichor sprayed across inert stone. The daemon struck his shoulder, denting ceramite. Guilliman responded with a headbutt that cracked the creature's helm. He fought not as a symbol, but as a general solving a battlefield equation in real time. The Null-field strained under the stress of two titanic presences colliding within their radius. The gardener roared and attempted to expand, drawing warp energy inward. It failed. Guilliman seized the moment. He drove the Emperor's sword straight through the daemon's chest, into the fractured sigil he had cracked earlier. Holy flame erupted, not outward, but inward. The sigil shattered. The root column behind them spasmed violently. The gardener screamed, a sound that tore through physical and immaterial layers alike, but it did not dissolve. Not yet. Instead, it laughed through blood and warp fire. "Kill me," it hissed, "and watch your fragile refuge burn." Guilliman understood instantly. The gardener had tied its essence to the daemon city's structural integrity. Slay it outright, and the collapse would trigger a warp bloom, consuming Harrowfall in psychic backlash. A choice: destroy the tyrant and sacrifice the enclave, or restrain victory and find another path. The Emperor's sword burned hotter in his grip. The Daemon Prince grinned through ruin. "Choose, Lord of Ultramar." The Emperor's sword remained buried in the gardener's chest. Holy fire ate through corrupted ceramite and rotting flesh, but Guilliman did not push deeper. He calculated. The daemon's essence was interwoven with the city's warp infrastructure. The root column pulsed erratically now, destabilized by null-field interference. If he annihilated the gardener outright, the feedback would cascade upward through the spire's ritual arrays, triggering a sector-scale warp bloom. Harrowfall would not survive that, nor would much else. The gardener sensed the hesitation. "Compassion," it crooned through blood-slicked teeth. "A strategic liability." Guilliman's expression did not change. "Incorrect." He withdrew the blade, not in retreat, but in precision recalibration. The Daemon Prince staggered back, laughing as warp energy tried to reassert itself around the chamber's edges. The null fields flickered under strain. One emitter burst in a shower of sparks and blackened circuitry. Time was narrowing. Guilliman stepped backward 3 paces, just enough to widen the tactical frame. "You have anchored your essence to infrastructure," he said evenly. "Redundant systems, fail-safes." The gardener tilted its head. "You are learning." Guilliman's gaze shifted, not to the daemon, but to the ceiling. The void ship plasma core fragments still embedded in the cavern roof. the industrial substructure, the transit conduits, and the dark Mechanicum. You tied yourself to this world to prevent annihilation, Guilliman continued, but you assumed your partners would maintain loyalty. The gardener's amusement flickered, as they crave efficiency. Exactly. Guilliman activated a private Vox channel, routing through frequencies the Magos believed scrambled. I know you're listening, he said calmly. Silence. Then a faint burst of Binharic static. Guilliman continued. If I destroy the gardener now, the resulting warp surge will destabilize your production grid. Total loss probability, 81%. A longer pause. The Daemon Prince snarled. You bargain with vermin? Guilliman ignored it. However, he went on, if I sever its warp anchors in controlled sequence, you retain infrastructure, reduced but intact. The Magos responded at last. Probability of success? 46%, Guilliman answered. The Magos hesitated, processing. The gardener lunged again, enraged by the negotiation. Guilliman parried and countered with brutal efficiency, carving a deep furrow across the demon's thigh. Warp ichor sprayed, sizzling against inert stone. Agreement parameters? The Magos transmitted urgently. Guilliman drove the daemon back toward the root column. You disengage from Harrowfall, he said, permanently. Settlement yield negligible, the Magos began. Incorrect, Guilliman cut in. It is non-negotiable. A pause. Then, conditional compliance acknowledged. The gardener roared and attempted to expand again, drawing warp energy from deeper strata. The Null-field screamed in protest as reality thinned. Guilliman moved. He tore emitter 5 from the root column and hurled it toward a secondary conduit junction. It detonated mid-air, projecting a final pulse that severed one of the gardener's anchor lines. The demon convulsed. Guilliman exploited the moment, driving the Emperor's sword through a different node, not the heart, but the stabilizing nexus that fed warp feedback into the spire. This time, the explosion was directional. Warp energy vented upward in a contained pillar rather than outward in a bloom. The cavern shook violently. Structural beams collapsed. The root column split, spilling molten ichor across the chamber floor. The gardener dropped to one knee. You diminish me, it rasped. Guilliman stepped forward, blade poised at its throat. I redefine you. He did not kill it. He severed its connection to the city's core. The Daemon Prince howled as its form destabilized, shrinking, condensing, reduced from sovereign architect to bound parasite. The warp pressure in the chamber collapsed to a manageable hiss. Above them, the spire's ritual glow dimmed dramatically, but did not explode. The Mago's voice returned, steadier now. Production grid stabilized at 63% capacity. Authority vacuum detected. Guilliman extinguished the Emperor's sword. The gardener writhed at his feet, alive but diminished, a king dethroned. You think this mercy is victory? It whispered weakly. Guilliman looked down at it, expression unreadable. No, he said. This is containment. He turned away from the crippled demon. Behind him, the cavern continued to collapse in controlled sequence, emitters failing one by one as their task concluded. The war was not over, but its terms had changed, and somewhere on the plains, beneath a bleeding sky that now flickered uncertainly, Harrowfall's people felt the pressure ease for the first time in years. The spire did not explode, it dimmed. Across the demon city, Warp light guttered from cathedral windows like candles smothered by unseen hands. The sky above, once a hemorrhaging crimson, fractured into uneven bands of bruised violet and ashen gray. For the first time since Guilliman's arrival, the horizon held still. Containment had worked, but containment was not conquest. Guilliman emerged from the collapsing undercity through a breach torn open by imploding conduit lines. He vaulted the last 20 meters as ferrocrete and bone-crusted metal cascaded downward behind him. Debris hammered against his armor, one shard embedded in his thigh plating before falling away. He did not slow. Above, the Daemon city convulsed in stages. Industrial districts sputtered. Ritual plazas flickered out of alignment. Entire half-block equivalents of twisted flesh simply hardened, reverting to inert matter. The gardener was still alive, reduced, angry, but no longer omnipresent. Guilliman's helm display flared with incoming signals, not Imperial, Xenos. A sleek craft slipped between cloud layers, its hull shimmering like oil on water. Elegant, silent. The markings were unmistakable. Eldari. The vessel didn't fire, it observed. A thin beam of pale light projected downward, and a figure stepped from it onto a rooftop overlooking the destabilizing city. Harlequin armor, motley diamond patterns that seemed to shift color depending on angle. A mask carved into a perpetual grin. The Harlequin bowed theatrically. "You prune a garden most aggressively, son of the corpse emperor," it called, voice musical even amid ruin. Guilliman landed on the same rooftop opposite it, Emperor's sword unlit but ready. "You were watching," he said flatly. "We are always watching when threads knot interestingly," the Harlequin replied. It tilted its head toward the dimming spire. "You chose not to kill it. Correct. Mercy? No." The Harlequin laughed softly. "Containment rarely lasts." Guilliman's gaze shifted across the city. Dark Mechanicum banners were already rising in certain districts, repositioning forces to exploit the vacuum. Efficiency replacing indulgence. He opened a secure channel to the Magos. "Your compliance with Harrowfall?" "Confirmed," came the reply. "Settlement designated non-harvest zone." Guilliman terminated the channel without comment. The Harlequin studied him. "You reshape a demon world into something less," it said, "yet you leave its heart beating." "I require a stable extraction window," Guilliman replied. "And intelligence." The Harlequin's mask tilted slightly. "Ah, you intend to leave. Eventually. Pity, you could have made such fascinating changes here." Guilliman did not answer that. In the distance, a tremor rippled through the city's western quarter. Warp energy spiked, localized, concentrated. The gardener was attempting to consolidate what remained of its essence, not to retake the throne, to flee. Guilliman felt it, a shift in warp vector, angling toward deep subspace conduits beneath the spire. If the Daemon escaped fully into the Imperium, it would reform elsewhere, stronger for having survived. He made his decision instantly. He leapt from the rooftop and sprinted toward the western sector. The Harlequin watched, and then vanished in a shimmer of refracted light, following. Guilliman reached the destabilized plaza as a rift began to tear open, a vertical wound in reality, barely 3 meters wide but expanding. Within it, the gardener's diminished form writhed, attempting to squeeze through like a serpent abandoning its burrow. Guilliman did not hesitate. He ignited the Emperor's sword mid-stride and plunged it directly into the rift's edge, rather than the demon itself. Reality screamed. Instead of striking the escaping essence, he carved along the warp tier's perimeter, disrupting its geometry. The null-field resonance lingering from previous emitters interfered just enough to destabilize the portal. The gardener shrieked as the rift collapsed inward. Guilliman seized the moment, grabbing the daemon's partially phased form with a hand of dominion. Warp fire burned along his gauntlet as he dragged the entity back into real space. "No escape," he growled. The rift snapped shut. The backlash hurled both of them across the plaza. Guilliman rose first. The gardener lay crumpled, no longer towering, no longer sovereign, just a twisted, condensed mass of malignant will. It tried to rise. Guilliman stepped forward and placed the sword's burning tip against its brow. "You do not get to carry this lesson elsewhere," he said. This time, he did not sever infrastructure. He did not negotiate. He executed. The blade descended. Holy flame consumed the demon's core essence, now severed from anchor points, stripped of redundancy. The Gardener of Kings dissolved into ash that did not drift upward, but fell. The city shuddered, but did not explode. Systems failed in cascade, but without warp bloom. Containment had bought precision. Guilliman extinguished the blade. Around him, the demon city settled into a quieter, uglier stability. Industrial, corrupt, but no longer sovereign under a prince. The Harlequin reappeared atop a fractured statue. "Well," it said lightly, "that was decisive." Guilliman looked out over the dimmed skyline. "Temporary," he replied. In the far distance, Harrowfall's lights flickered, steady. The world was not saved, but it was altered. And that alteration would ripple outward. The demon city did not collapse. It recalibrated. Without the gardener's omnipresent will binding organic growth to ritual geometry, entire districts hardened into inert ruin. Towers once grown from bone and brass shed layers like molting carcasses, revealing the skeletal industrial framework beneath. Warp lightning still flickered in the upper atmosphere, but no longer in rhythmic pulses of sovereignty. It was ambient now, background radiation, manageable. Guilliman stood at the highest accessible platform of the fractured spire and surveyed the altered world. Below, dark Mechanicum cohorts were already reorganizing labor units and redirecting energy flows. Their banners rose not in triumph, but in calculation. Production metrics would replace devotional excess. Inefficiency would be culled. The world remained damned, but it was no longer orchestrated toward despair as spectacle. Behind him, the Harlequin observed quietly. "You have not purified it," the Xeno said. "No," Guilliman replied. "You have not conquered it. No, you have edited it." Guilliman allowed the faintest narrowing of his eyes. "Yes." The Harlequin's mask shifted hue in the shifting light. "And what of your enclave?" Guilliman activated a secure Vox channel. "Varus." Static crackled briefly, then steadied. "My lord?" The voice was clearer than before, less tremor. "Status. Pressure has eased. Host formations are disorganized. No direct advance. We can breathe." Guilliman looked toward Harrowfall's distant silhouette. "You will fortify," he said. "No prayer beacons, no mass gatherings. Discipline is survival." "Yes, my lord." The channel closed. Guilliman turned his gaze back to the city. The dark Mechanicum Magos approached via gravitic platform, mecha dendrites humming. Authority consolidation in progress, it reported. Production losses acceptable. Settlement exclusion zone maintained. Guilliman descended from the platform to meet it at eye level. "You understand," he said evenly, "that I did not spare you." The Mago's optic flickered. Clarification requested. "You are a tool," Guilliman continued. "One I will monitor." The Magos processed this in silence. "Probability of your return?" it asked finally. Guilliman's expression did not shift. "High." The Magos inclined its torso slightly. "Then we shall optimize accordingly." It withdrew. The Harlequin stepped closer. "You leave a demon world functioning," it said. "The Inquisition would burn it." "The Inquisition is not here," Guilliman replied. "And if they come, then this world becomes a different problem." The Harlequin laughed softly. "You are dangerously pragmatic, Primarch." Guilliman did not respond. He activated his helm's long-range auger suite. The Null-field resonance had thinned the warp density just enough to reveal a narrow, unstable corridor beyond the upper atmosphere. An extraction vector, temporary. He looked once more at the altered cityscape. He had not cleansed it. He had not redeemed it. He had imposed a variable into its equation. Order. Not absolute, not pure, but sufficient. The Harlequin tilted its head. "You could stay," it offered lightly. "Shape it further." Guilliman's gaze hardened. "I have a galaxy to repair." The Eldari bowed. "As you wish, a son of Ultramar. Threads diverge." With that, it dissolved into refracted light. Guilliman ignited his jump pack's auxiliary thrusters and launched skyward. The bleeding clouds parted reluctantly as he ascended toward the thin seam in reality that would carry him back toward Imperial space. Below, Harrowfall's lights held steady. The demon city pulsed, not with sovereign will, but with industrial persistence. A demon world that remembered structure. And far beneath its surface, in shattered root systems where the gardener once anchored its throne, something new stirred. Not demonic, not holy, adaptive. Guilliman crossed the extraction threshold just as the corridor began to collapse behind him. The warp swallowed him. But this time, it did not feel like invitation. It felt like retreat. Roboute Guilliman did not cleanse the demon world. He did something far more unsettling. He proved it could be managed. By severing the gardener's sovereignty without triggering annihilation, he transformed a realm of curated despair into a contested industrial wasteland, still corrupt, still heretical, but no longer unified under a single demonic thesis. Hope was no longer weaponized spectacle. It became discipline. Harrowfall survived, not through miracle, but through restraint. The dark Mechanicum endured, not redeemed, but constrained by a variable they could not fully predict. And somewhere in the Imperium, the echo of a slain Daemon Prince carried a warning. Primarchs do not simply burn corruption. They analyze it. Guilliman returned to the wider Imperium unchanged in faith, but altered in understanding. He had seen that even a demon world possessed infrastructure, assumptions,